Hi, and welcome to today's show. I'm so glad that you're joining me because we have an outstanding show in store for you today. Now, as you may know, this show is dedicated to motivating, entertaining, and inspiring you to live your best life. And often on the show, we talk to different people about their own journeys along the path to live the life of their dreams, or we'll talk about some great information that they have to share with us. The point of the show is always this: to remind you that you can live the life of your dreams and to give you some of the tools and information that can help take you there. Now, my name is Mara Brown, and I'm your host for the show. I'm a best-selling author, life and executive coach, and motivational speaker. I have 3 books out. One is called Soaring to Success. Another one's called The Interior Castle, Finding Spirituality in Your Everyday Life. And my new book is called What Now? The Road from Success to Significance. So again, welcome to the show. And we are doing a 3-part series with Dr. Judith Orloff. And I hope you tuned in to part 1. If not, catch it again, look it up. It will be coming back around. And now we are here for part 2. So in case you didn't see part 1 yet, Dr. Judith Orloff is a medical doctor. She's an intuitive, a healer, a New York Times bestseller, an author of 6 books, her latest one just coming out that we're going to talk a lot about, and an all-around incredible human being. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Judith Orloff. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Part 2.
Part 2.
Woohoo. So I want to start today by talking a bit about your childhood. We touched on it last time, where you were born into a family of medical doctors, from a long line of medical doctors.
Right.
And you came in an intuitive empath.
Right.
And
an only child.
And an only child. So there was a pressure on you. They probably didn't understand like how you were. How did that feel growing up? Did you knew you were different? Was that difference nurtured, valued, devalued? How was your experience growing up?
Well, I think my parents couldn't have loved me more, but they didn't understand me being an empath, and that's why I wrote the Empath Survival Guide, to help people embrace the empath within them.
Right.
But I was an empath, and I was very quiet, and I kept to myself, and I found my solace watching the moon, or being with trees or animals. I was not an extroverted child, and I was very sensitive. And my parents finally said to me, never mention your intuitions at home again, because I would have predictive dreams.
Right, like didn't you have a predictive dream or a feeling when your grandfather died, or he came to you?
I did. My grandfather, who I was really close with, came to me in a dream one night, and he wanted to say goodbye and let me know that he loved me, and let me know that he was passing over. And so in the dream it felt fine, but I woke up and I was scared, and I ran into my parents' room to tell them. They said, "Oh no, dear, it's just a nightmare."
And how old were you?
I was 9.
9, okay.
9, and the next morning the phone rang and my grandfather had passed on.
And did you feel that your dream in any way caused that? Because children have
such at the time.
Yes, because children feel that there's that connection.
Yeah, I did at the time. I wondered, because my parents looked shocked and not happy.
Yeah, and that must have been so scary.
It was very scary. I had no one to say, "Oh no, dear, it's very natural to have dreams about loved ones who are passing over."
Right.
And so there's even a type of empath that I write about in the book, a mediumship empath, who have people have a strong connection to the other side.
Yes, yes.
So it's just a matter of intuitive awareness. But as a child, I didn't know that.
And they didn't know. They had no context with
Well, my story is interesting, because as I write about in Second Sight, my mother turned out to be a very strong intuitive, and she did not tell me that until her deathbed.
Right. She was afraid of
She was afraid of it. She was a doctor in Beverly Hills, and she wanted everyone to accept her, and she was part of the traditional medical community, and she didn't want to be considered a psychic.
And that's why when she saw it in you, perhaps, instead of not just knowing what the context to put it in, she was like, no, let's
squash it.
Squash it, because I don't want you to have to go with what I felt, which was just such a conflict within herself.
Right, and my mother was obsessed with other people not thinking I was weird.
Right, Right.
And I've always, led the road less traveled. I've always been over here in my own little tributary. I've never gone the mainstream. And so it's been an interesting journey having a mother who is so sensitive and so open, but yet trying to squash it and trying to squash it in me.
Right.
So it's been my journey that I talk about in Second Sight. And my joy is writing the Empath Survival Guide to help other children, who are sensitive and open and empathic, so their gifts can be really encouraged and developed.
Well, let's talk about that a bit deeper.
Yeah.
So, as a parent, how would you know if your child is empathic, and what could you do to nurture that as opposed to squash it or make them feel like something's wrong with them?
Exactly. Well, there's a quiz in the Empath Survival Guide. Is your child an empath? And you can go through some of the questions in the quiz. And one thing, does a child like to play alone and really get a lot of satisfaction from that?
Right.
Does the child get overwhelmed by too many play dates, and would rather have things spaced out? Does the child have one friend rather than 10 friends?
Right.
And one
Or
best
are they into
friend?
sports or...
Right. Is a child overwhelmed by noise, smells, excessive talking? Is a child a dreamer? Is the child intuitive? Does the child sense energy? So to begin to have that conversation with your children so that you can go, wow, that's amazing. Let me help you deal with it, because not all of the world will understand it.
And especially, I think there's got to be an extra challenge if the empath child is a male.
Oh, there
in
is.
our society.
Oh, my God. Men have it much worse than women. Highly sensitive boys, because they're considered sissies.
Right.
Or soft or feminine.
Right.
As a lot of highly sensitive boys don't like to play on sports teams.
Right.
And they don't like video games because they're too loud and noisy. So they're kind of bullied at school a lot of times. So, in the book I talk about that, because the parents have to be an advocate of their children. They need to go into the school and have zero tolerance for bullying and explain the sensitivity level.
As opposed to some parents would push their kid to try to get into the sports or play with the group. Right, and it's the exact opposite.
Well, hopefully the guidance is here in the book for parents and what to do and what would be helpful.
So if you're listening and you think your child is in any way an empath, if any of these things are ringing true for you, any of the points that Judith brought up, definitely get this book. And because I think that how a parent handles that, especially in this day and age, especially for a male, is going to be critical to, critical.
Absolutely. Critical. I feel so strongly about it because of my childhood.
Right.
And it was so painful, and to feel so alone.
Yes. Yes,
And
because you feel like no one understands you.
No one understands you. I thought a spaceship was going to land in my front yard to take me to my true home. I didn't have friends who were empaths. And so children these days don't need to go through that.
Yeah, I remember I felt like I was adopted, but I knew I wasn't, so I thought, well, maybe they switched out birth by mistake, right?
Yeah.
Like I just did, because I was in a family of 4 children, but I was the only different one.
Right,
so
but that's common with empaths, to feel that way, to be the different one, to be the one that doesn't fit in or belong.
Right.
But I want to say that there's a whole community of empaths now. And you can go to my Facebook Empath Support Community. I have an Empath Support newsletter. But you don't have to be alone.
Right. Right.
You don't have to be alone. And
which I think is key.
It's
right?
key.
Because, as we talked a bit about, we touched on last show, that some empaths, upon feeling that it's just them, they're all alone, they can go and hide out and then become neurotic. And then go and get, quote, medication for a, quote, problem that they don't have.
Right, and it's all going the wrong direction.
It's totally going, well, it's very askew at that point in time. So, so let's talk a bit about protection strategies that, anyone, whether you're an empath or not, can use to protect your own energy. It's so important for an empath, but I think it's important for absolutely anybody watching, right, to protect their own energy. Because a lot of times we're in environments, whether it's at work, at a social situation, whatever, where it's not the most loving and nurturing environment, let's say.
Exactly. And I just want to say to everyone, we're made up of these bodies, but we also have energy fields. And they go through our body, the subtle energy, or Chinese practitioners call it qi.
Right.
The basic life force, sacred energy that goes through the body but extends beyond the body. So each person has an energy field that empath can sense.
Okay.
And so when I brush against somebody's energy field, I can feel who they are.
Oh, well, we hugged, so you'll have to tell me.
But all empaths, you can feel. Empaths sense energy more than understand words. They can sense who you are, and especially children can sense, I trust this person, I don't trust this person feels good, they don't feel good.
Yes.
And so we need to trust that.
Yes.
And really know that we can sense energy, and we can go towards the positive energy.
Right.
And go towards the loving people, the compassionate people, the people who are doing the spiritual, emotional work to integrate and become whole.
Right.
You want that. You don't want some unconscious narcissist seducing you and charming you, and you getting sucked into that negative pattern.
So let's talk a bit about that, because in your book you created a whole chapter on energy vampires, people who suck your energy.
Yeah.
And you were saying that there's this unholy attraction between empaths and narcissists, and that could be the most dangerous part, the most dangerous way of someone sucking your energy.
It's very, very dangerous for empaths to be around narcissists, because full-blown narcissists have an empathy deficient disorder.
And there's neuroscience now to support that, right?
Oh, that's how they're defined. And there's so many narcissists, sociopaths, and psychopaths in prison who have this empathy deficient disorder.
So they just don't feel what they do to others.
They don't have a conscience. They don't have empathy as we know it.
Right.
And it's so hard for empaths to grasp that. And I always suggest read that chapter on narcissists in the book so you can see the signs of who
because they can be pretty charming, right? In the beginning.
They can be incredibly charming. And, of course I want to hear your feelings. That's so incredible. And they know how to charm. They're very smart intuitively. So they know how to read you.
Push your buttons.
They don't push your buttons in the beginning. They reel you in.
Yes.
And once you're in, then when you don't go according to their program, they become cold, withholding, and punishing.
Right.
But the empath is hooked in then.
Right. And they can make you crazy, especially to empaths, right?
Oh,
they can create
crazy
scenes and stories
gaslighting, making you think you're crazy, but you're not.
Why did you make me hit you? I don't want to hit you. Why did you make me?
Right.
Right? Like,
that's powerful.
Really crazy, right? And then the empath, of course, is going to... So the empath is going to take on that anger, right, and feel the anger, and then the victim, and then the guilt and the shame, just overwhelming emotions, I would imagine. Like, that's hard to maneuver.
It's hard to manage, and what the empath does is the self-esteem goes down.
Right.
And the empath begins to doubt him or herself with the narcissist.
Right.
But they're so in love with the narcist, or they have children with the narcissist.
Right. Or they think they'll change because they remember how they were in the beginning, and they're like, oh, right, but I know who he or she really is. Now,
it's not going to happen.
Is there a connection between empaths born to narcissistic parents? Because, just in my own life, I've seen that a lot of the empaths that I know tend to have very narcissistic parents. Is there a connection or no?
Well, sometimes when someone is born empathic to one degree or another, if they have narcissistic parents, abusive parents, alcoholic parents, it can wear down their defenses, their energy defenses, so they become more open and raw.
Okay.
As parents like that don't support the energy field of the child.
Right.
They wear it down.
All right. And let's talk a bit about what you just touched on, because I think there's a connection between addiction and being an empath, because when you're overwhelmed with everyone and your own emotions and you don't even know how to tell the difference, what do? A lot of empaths turn to numb it with drugs and alcohol. Is there...
And food and sex and shopping, any kind of addictive behavior.
Any addictive behavior.
I have a whole chapter in the book on empaths and addiction because it's so common. When empaths go on sensory overload, they reach for something to numb it out.
Right.
Because they don't know how to bring down the sensory overload immediately. The sensory overload, I tell you from personal experience, is extremely painful.
Yes.
Have you experienced
that?
Yeah. It's extremely painful. And when I go on it, I have to take myself away in a room and meditate or turn down the lights or just really be quiet with no input to get myself back down. And so I've learned to take care of myself in that way.
Right, because you went through the addiction road.
Yeah. I've been
Right.
in 12-step
you've
programs
healed-
for over 28 years.
Right.
So, I did as a child because
You don't
I
know
had,
any different.
I don't know any different. I had all these intuitions, these premonitions. I was sensing energy. I was absorbing energy. My parents were telling me to get a thicker skin. I was going crazy.
Right,
So,
and instead of realizing what a
Yeah.
beautiful gift that was.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting? The more I talk to people, the more I realize the things in childhood or in our early life that we think are our worst qualities, that are like our nemesis, the things we hate about ourselves, are the things truly, I think, that end up being our most greatest, most precious gifts. Do you find that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I had a love-hate relationship with my sensitivities because I knew it was me. I knew it was my deepest self, and intuition was a deep part of me, and empathy. But then I hated it because I didn't fit in, and people were telling me to change, and I had no way to manage it. And
Right.
so my healing path has been integrating my empathy, my intuition, my linear mind, and not having to go the road that most people go, that being okay with being the outsider and embracing that, or being different. What is different? Really, it's everyone's unique.
Everyone's unique. And so how though, if as an empath you're feeling your emotions and you're feeling other people's stuff, and especially sensitive to other people's stuff that's reflecting your unhealed stuff.
Right.
So how do you know what's yours and what's not yours? How do you discern?
Well, I always ask myself that when my buttons are pushed and I notice that as an empath I'm absorbing your stuff,
Right.
I always ask myself what's being activated in me that I haven't resolved yet. Let's say I'm picking up your anxiety. I'll look back in myself and say, what about my own anxiety? Do I need to clear still? And I want to make this point, and I did make this point in the book, and it's very important, that as an empath child, I picked up my mother's anxiety. She had a lot of anxiety. She had a lot of physical symptoms, and she would ask me to sit with her and hold her hand. And as an empath child,
wow.
I didn't want to. It was scary to me. And it was in a dark room. But as I held her hand, her energy would come into me. So as an adult, I had to really deal with how much of this is my mother's anxiety and how much is my own.
Right.
And so I've had to work with that. And a lot of times my patients that I work with, and what I've described in the book is a cord-cutting meditation with a quality in somebody that you still may be absorbing your mother's or your father's or your sister's, brother's stress, or some quality that you need to cut the cord with that quality.
Okay, so
And
if you think there's something in you that's not yours, then can you give us like a 30-second sort of explanation of that cutting of the cord, of what they could do if someone's watching right now and they're like, that sounds really familiar to me. I think I'm taking on, my husband's, my wife's, my mother's, my father's, my sister, my kids' stuff, right? What do you...
Well, there are two options. There's the complete cord cutting if you just want the person out of your life. Like if you're leaving a narcissistic husband and you don't need any more contact with them. You don't have kids in common. You could just leave. Then you want to do a complete cord cutting. But like in the case of my mother, I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to cut the cord with my mother's anxiety.
Right.
And so what I did was I visualized a cord going between my mother and myself in my heart, or sometimes you can feel it in the solar plexus, and see that cord of light going from you to the other person, and then inwardly thank Spirit for that connection and whatever you needed to learn from it, and then take a scissors and completely cut it.
Okay.
The cord from my anxiety to my mother's, cut it. And then you feel a recoiling. And the other person, if they're alive, can usually feel it, and they get cranky or anxious because they no longer have that connection. And then you go into a meditation, a 3-minute meditation, to really reorient yourself without that connection.
Okay.
It's a big shift to not do it, but you really don't want to keep those cords going with other people's stuff. If you were an empath child and you were absorbing your parents' stuff, you don't want to keep that going as an adult.
And does it keep going even once the parent crosses over?
Oh yeah, it can go on forever until you cut the cord.
And so is there a reason to do it for 3 minutes after to reorient, or is it just any amount of time, but minimum 3 minutes?
Well, I love the 3-minute heart meditation that I describe in the book. I use it all the time,
that's
so
beautiful.
I'm programmed to do things for 3 minutes.
And anyone can do 3 minutes, right? Like that's the thing.
You'd be
Anyone can
surprised.
do 3 minutes. So let's talk about that heart, because I think that's a beautiful exercise,
Yeah.
and I think could be used by so many people, you know, empaths and anybody. So let's talk about that. Can you sort of share that? It's a quick little.
Yeah. Well, empaths need to learn how to center themselves. And this is a quick way to do so. If you're being thrown off by the world, if you're on sensory overload, you know, if you're just taking on too much stuff, you can stop, go into a bathroom if that's the only place you have, go into your office, go into your bedroom, shut the door, and for 3 minutes, just begin to focus on your breath and your heart energy, which comes from the heart chakra right here, which is the center for unconditional love. And so what I suggest is people put their hand over their heart chakra and begin to focus on something really that you love, like your doggy,
Your dog
or a flower or a sunset, whatever, whoever's listening, whatever you love, you focus on it and keep your hand on your heart and keep breathing very slowly and focus only on the energy of love. And then by 3 minutes, you'll come back to that healing energy. It can feel blissful. It can feel warm. It can feel safe.
Like I already feel it, like just
Yeah, I
sitting
know,
here right
I know,
now.
I know.
Like I'm like, woo, it feels really good.
Yeah,
So
well,
yeah,
it feels
I can already feel
wonderful.
it.
But I love to come back to that place in myself when I get thrown off.
Yeah, yeah.
And so everyone can do that for 3 minutes. And I suggest everyone get a sacred space at home, a sacred space with a table, candles. I have a Kuan Yin statue.
Right, or
on my-
anything that appeals to you that like
Yeah.
means like something of a higher nature, right? Or
You want a safe place to go to at home.
Yeah.
And that for me is
your
my
little
sacred
sanctuary. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to, when I travel, I miss my altar. I miss my
Yeah.
space, because when you sit there, day after day, year after year, you
Build the
build a
energy.
vortex
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
So it feels safer and
Yeah.
safer and better
Yeah.
and better.
Yeah.
And so if you're an empath, sensitive person, you need to
need
have,
that.
you need it desperately.
Yeah.
And it's such a relief to have it.
And I know too, you talk about in the book that water is a great medium. Like I know for me, I love to swim. And I just intuitively always say, every time I swim, I'm always saying, I release any negative energy. I've done that forever. And it's just was an intuitive thing. And so I think, is water a big conducer of energy? Is that why it's a cleansing or a helpful thing for people to be in water if you're wanting to cleanse some of that stuff?
Empaths love water. Water is cleansing, it's purifying, it's renewing. I go into a bath every night, and I could go in for a long time. And I
Judith.
just surrender and go into trance and go into a dreamlike state in my bathtub and just allow myself to be cleansed, and it just takes away all the stuff of the day.
Yeah.
It just washes it away, either
You
in
can
a
just see it go
bathtub, a
down the
shower,
drain, right?
down the drain,
Yeah.
away, and then after the
Yeah,
bath, and I towel off. It just feels new.
Nice. And Epsom salts are really good too
Yeah.
to get rid of that emotional stuff.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to touch on too before we close is the different kinds of empaths you could be.
Yeah.
Because I know you talk a lot about that in your book, and it's fascinating how it shows itself in many different ways. Can you talk a bit about the different ways one can be an empath?
Well, an empath is a sponge and takes on the energy or emotions or physical symptoms of others. And so you could be a physical empath, where you tend to pick up others' physical symptoms. You literally take on, quote, empathic illnesses that I write about in the book, where you take on someone else's stuff, physical stuff.
Someone's
in
got
your
a
own
headache
body.
or a stomach ache or whatever
It's-
you're
it
feeling.
has to be worked with. Yeah, that can't go on. I somaticize a lot, so I've got to work with that a lot, not
Yeah.
to pick up other people's physical stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's emotional empath, who picks up other people's emotions.
Uh-huh.
And then an intuitive empath, they can be numerous kinds, such as an animal empath, somebody who communicates with animals.
I would love to learn how to be that.
I think you are one.
It's like, I know that when I'm thinking in my head that I'm going to give my dog a bath, I'm just thinking it, and he runs and hides.
Yeah.
So there's that
That's
for
funny.
me. But, yeah.
I think St. Francis was an animal empath.
Yes, I think that you're
As
right.
the birds would gather for his
Yes,
sermons,
yes.
and he would go into periods of solitude
Yeah.
with his animal companions, not
Yeah.
with people.
Yeah,
So empaths can be very attuned to animals, and they
Yeah.
often go into animal rescue.
yeah, I love that. I'm doing the life coaching for dogs thing.
Oh, that's sweet. That's
Yeah,
great.
So I would love to learn more about, like, literally being able to read an animal's thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're plant empaths that really resonate with plants and green
Right.
growing things.
Right.
And they're dream empaths who get guidance from their dreams. There's mediumship empaths, those that can communicate with the other side. Telepathic empaths, precognitive empaths.
And sexual impacts, I know.
There,
empaths, we talked a
yeah,
bit about
people
that.
who are particularly open to sexual energy during lovemaking, where they pick up their partner's stuff, which is a
Right.
whole other.
Right.
You
So
know.
you got to be careful if you're an empath who you're inviting into your bed.
There's
right?
no such thing as casual sex for an empath,
Right,
because
yeah.
you pick up on their energy field.
Yeah, yeah. I was talking to you a bit before the show where I've once taken on somebody's ailments.
Right.
And they
Right.
took my light, and I took their ailments.
Right.
I had to work hard to get it back, to get my own stuff back. So
Absolutely.
if you are an empath and you're, enjoying casual sex, remember, like Judith says, it's not casual. It's
Well, you
gonna-
risk taking on other people's stuff, and so you
Right.
really, when you get intimate with someone, you want to be with somebody really positive and loving, so that you can share
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
That's a beautiful, wonderful feeling.
Yes.
Of sharing that.
Yes,
of
and
the
that's the
sacred
thing with the
sexuality.
beautiful part about being an empath. Like, we've talked a little bit about the uncomfortable part, right?
Right,
But
right.
the beautiful part, right, is that when someone's feeling joy, you feel that joy right along with them. Like, it's just like there's so many good parts to being an empath as well.
Oh,
Like, it
yes.
magnifies the good, right?
Yes, and empaths love connection. They
Yeah.
love personal relationships, one-to-one, small groups, maybe not large groups.
Not parties as much,
Not
but
so
just
much.
because I don't think of it's like the small talk. Right?
Yeah, empaths don't like small talk.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've had to really reconcile that in myself, because I've never been good at it.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
And so I tell my friends so they could do it. Do something else.
Yeah, exactly. And so before we close up our second part of the series, is there anything that you want to talk about that we haven't covered that you feel is important for anyone listening right now to know?
Well, I think, again, I want to reiterate, if you're an empath, a sensitive person, beware of narcissists. Full-blown narcissist will suck your energy dry. And as much as you may be attracted to them, try and say no. No is a complete sentence.
Yes.
Try and say no, and be sensitive to the fact that you might be around positive people or energy vampires. And you want to really set limits with energy vampires and have more circle of positive people around you, because you deserve to have that light and love.
Awesome. And you closed with a quote in your book about treasuring yourself and allowing others to. Do you want to close with that quote? I think it's beautiful. The quote that you closed the book with, you treasure. I think it was like, I want to treasure myself and
have
only
others
allow people in my life that will treasure me, and that I'm going to treasure this empath journey that I'm on, that it's an
Yes.
adventure. And so I can't really think of any better way to close than your own beautiful words. That was beautiful. So if you in any way resonate to any of these things, you want to get clear with setting boundaries, noticing what might be yours, what might not be yours, how you feel around people. Pay attention to the things that are going on within your body, around your body, and with other people, and just get really close and healthy with your own spirit, your own self, your own body, and you will live a life of your dreams. We'll see you next time.